thank you, Matt. Appreciate the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out on this beautiful day. My name is Ken Krawchuk. I am the Libertarian Party candidate for Pennsylvania governor, seeking the nomination of the party. What I'd like to do is just briefly introduce myself, introduce the party, and talk about a few things you might be able to expect out of a Libertarian governor. Sound good? All right. Thank you. Start at the beginning. My name is Ken Krawchuk. I was born and raised in Einstein Hospital in North Philadelphia. Grew up in a row home. Married to my wife Roberta now. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary about 6 weeks ago. Thank you. Thank you. I guess she hasn't gotten tired of me yet. And, you know, our kids pick on us because they say, all of our friends' parents are divorced, separated, second marriages. What's wrong with you guys? I don't know. I guess we work at it. Different from everybody else. We have 3 beautiful daughters, 3 grandchildren so far. I hear the 4th one on the way. Hopefully. We'll see. Professionally, I'm an information technology consultant. I have been since I was 17 years old as a programmer. I run my own consulting firm, I guess now for about 25 years. I personally created jobs. I also hold 3 United States patents related to database theory, so if there are any geeks in the audience, we can get together and talk about these things afterward. I'm also a Toastmaster. Toastmasters is an international organization to teach leadership and public speaking skills, and I consider myself a fortunate example of their teachings. So I'm a family member, businessman, inventor, Toastmaster, but most importantly, I'm a libertarian. We libertarians are different from the 2 old parties because we are the party of principle. Every law we support, every law we oppose can be traced back to one central idea. The idea that your life is yours, that your property is yours, that you have the inalienable right to live your life your way without interference, provided only that you respect the rights and property of others. That's it. Your life, your way. That's what it means to be a libertarian. It's the golden rule on a political level. And the public has reacted very strongly to that message. Since our founding in 1971, we have grown to become the 3rd largest party, hands down, by all measures. Number of registered libertarians, number of libertarians in office, media attention. We outnumber all the other 3rd parties put together. I like to call us the 800-pound chihuahua on the political scene. Now let me ask you a question. How many of you believe that you should be able to live your own life your own way, provided you respect the rights and property of others?
Yeah!
Oh yeah!
Wow! We're all libertarian! We should be voting that way.
Amen.
I do.
Now, what can you expect from a libertarian governor? Obviously, you're going to find somebody who's going to treat your life as your own, as your property is yours. Unlike some of the Democrats and Republicans that we have elected in the past. As I travel the state, I hear a lot from people. A lot of things they'd like to see changed. And one of the biggest concerns they have is taxes. How many of you think taxes are too low? Oh, but the microphone's not working. I don't have a microphone. No, of course not. Taxes are too high, and they keep getting higher. Taxes are high because spending is high. Spending is high because politicians love to glad hand your money around. Corporate welfare, special interests, all these different things. Do you know that in Pennsylvania, the cost of government has been growing at more than 3 times the rate of inflation for over 50 years? It doesn't matter if it's a Republican in office, doesn't matter if it's a Democrat in office, it doesn't matter if it's the high inflation era of the Carter years or the low inflation that we've had from time to time. The direction is always up at more than 3 times the rate of inflation. When I'm governor, that trend will end. Using the powers granted to me by the Pennsylvania Constitution, I promise I will veto every single tax increase that comes to my desk.
Okay.
Thank you. Growth of government, cost of government in Pennsylvania will stop when I'm governor. It's not just the growth. I will also be able to stop the size. I will be able to reduce the size of government because the Pennsylvania Constitution gives the governor the line item veto. That means I can go through individual bills, cross out the expensive parts, the unconstitutional parts, the busybody parts. guaranteed to reduce the cost of government in Pennsylvania.
All right.
Are you taking the Boy Scout? Do you have a question?
I have a question.
I'll go for a question.
When have you noticed a bill go across the governor's desk that wasn't completely 100% unconstitutional?
Well,
Thank you.
that's a good question. I have not read all the bills, so I'm in a position to say, I can't say, oh, none of them, but certainly none of the ones that I've seen. For example, the one that just went by recently with the medical marijuana. Don't we have the right to keep and bear plants?
Yes.
I'll talk more about that in a bit. But you're correct. Most of the laws that get passed violate the Constitution in one form or another. So I will be a guardian of the Constitution. I take my oath to uphold the Constitution seriously. And the first thing I'll be able to do is cut the cost of government using those powers. Second thing I hear a lot about, and it's probably more important than taxation, and that's education. The Pennsylvania Constitution mandates that the Commonwealth maintain a thorough and efficient system of public education. Well, have they met that goal? I don't think so. Do you know that 90% of the kids in Pennsylvania all go to the same school system? The government school system. It's an effective monopoly. And like most monopolies, cost is high, choice is low, and the quality is not always the best. When I'm governor, I will work to end that monopoly, to bring in more alternatives, to bring in things like homeschooling, which I think is probably one of the best things to do.
Absolutely.
More alternative education, more cyber education. Not that big boxy building on the corner that we've known and loved for the past 100 years. But there is that constitutional mandate that the Commonwealth maintain the education. We're not going to be able to change that in any 2 years, 3 years, 4-year term. So what I would like to do is propose a way that we could improve education for the same dollar. Improve government education. And what I'd like to do is end that monopoly by bringing in somebody who has been left out of the argument far too long, the parents.
All right.
Okay. Specifically, what I would like to do is I would like the parents to be able to choose any government school for their child, and the funding which would have gone to their local school will follow the child to the school of the parent's choice. Think about that. That means that good schools will get more money and prosper, and the poor schools will be put on notice by their declining enrollment that they better get their act together or they're going to be shut down. So for the same educational dollar, we can improve education.
All right.
And when I say improve education, I'm not talking about what I think is better, or what Steve thinks is better, or what Matt thinks is better. I'm talking about what's better in the eyes of the people who matter most, the parents.
Right.
Because they're the ones who are raising the children. It's their children. They should be making the decisions. So that's how I'd like to improve education, by using the same dollar. I can go on and on. There's so many different points that I could bring up. I could talk about this insane war on drugs. I could talk about little things like this puppy bill that just got passed. I could talk about large items, small items, fracking, the environment, on and on. So let me open it up for questions in a moment. But before I do, I just want to highlight one thing. People say, Ken, I like the ideas you're talking about. Yes, we should cut the size and cost of government. Yes, we should empower parents to do this, but be real, Ken. You're never going to get elected. Wait, I can. Because the Democrats and Republicans have alienated so many people. Do you know how many people are going to vote in next year's governor race? About a third, 38%. I don't even think it's going to hit 40%. If you crunch the numbers, you'll find that all it takes to elect a Libertarian governor is for us to attract the attention of 1 out of 8 voting age Pennsylvanians. 1 out of 8 is all it takes. So if you're sitting in a room talking politics with 7 of your friends, and 7 of them say, this guy's crazy, we're not going to do it. But 1 says, you know, I like this idea. I like the idea of treating your life as your own. That's all it's going to take. 1 out of 8. So I ask you, please, vote for me, Ken Krawchuk, Libertarian for Pennsylvania governor. Tell your friends to vote for me. Visit my website, kenk4pa.com. Visit my Facebook page. Subscribe to my Twitter feed. Every Wednesday night at 8 p.m., I do a live Facebook event. Tune into those. Vote for me, Ken Krawchuk, Libertarian for governor, because if you keep voting the way you've been voting, you're going to keep on getting just what you've been getting. And I don't know about you, but I have had enough.
Right.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. I'd be happy to take a question on any subject.
Why can't we send the dollars to private schools as well as public?
Why can't we send money to
Educational.
private schools as well as public?
Yeah. Because it says, as I
Says
read it,
in the
it's-
Pennsylvania Constitution,
Provide
Article
for,
1,
though.
Section 16, I believe, that no money from the general fund shall be used for the benefit of any sectarian school.
Okay, so if it's a secular private school, though, what about that? I'm not talking about a parochial school.
I have one major misgiving about that. I call it the political golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. The minute you accept their money, you accept whatever burden they wish to put
Okay.
upon
So what
you.
about a tax?
Well, one thing at a time.
Okay, but I'm
One thing at a
saying
time.
it,
All of a sudden, they start dictating who can teach and who can't teach in your school, how many days you have to teach,
Sure.
what subjects you have to teach. Oh, and you've got to take our measurement tests. And the next thing you know, your school is not your own. You're just part of the appendage of the monopoly.
so we're pulling our kids out of public school. Let's get a tax rebate for that, or
Gov-
not a rebate. Just don't even have to pay that.
I don't call them public schools. I call them
Deductions.
government schools.
Okay.
7-Elevens are public. They're not government. Our
So
school
what about
system
that,
is
though?
government.
Would that work? To give a tax deduction for people who don't send their children to public school.
You know, I used to like the idea of tax deductions, but I found very early on that I was becoming a perpetrator of something that I would speak against, and that's the complication of the tax code. The last thing we should be doing is trying to do social engineering through the tax code. What I would like to do is repeal as many of these funny things as possible. In fact, one of my pledges is to eliminate the Pennsylvania income tax over the 4 years of my term.
Okay.
So I'm not in favor of complicating the tax code. Who's in favor of complicating the tax code? My microphone-
Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, my microphone got turned off again. So I'd be cautious about that.
Right.
I would speak against it. Any other questions? Sir?
Yeah, they say libertarians hate the environment because they just want corporations
Ah!
to run wild with everything and pollute everything.
Libertarian.
What's your answer to that?
I have two answers to that. First of all, I stand here against corporations. I think the idea of a corporation is fundamentally flawed because what you do when you create a corporation, you create a person. To quote one of our presidential candidates from not too long ago, corporations are people too. That's a frightening statement.
Yeah.
Because a corporation has one major difference between them and a person. They're immortal. Another thing is that there's nobody responsible if something goes wrong. You look at the big BP oil spill, the Exxon Valdez oil spill. Do you know who went to jail for that? Nobody, because the corporation was liable. I would like to see corporations eliminated. If you want to open up a company, fine, but you should not get this carte blanche that says, oh, you can do what you want and you're not responsible. That's half my answer. That's the corporate answer. Let's eliminate corporate personhood. Second part of my answer is the environment. I'm a huge supporter of the environment. Love the environment. In fact, when I ran for governor in 2002, I was greener than the green guy because he was fighting for nuclear power, and I was in favor of power choice. Big difference. We go camping all the time. This past Monday, what's that? 6 days ago, my wife and I were screaming down the Lehigh River doing some whitewater canoeing. We go camping all the time. In fact, we met on a camping trip. We take our kids camping, we take our grandkids camping. We were on the Appalachian Trail 1 month ago today, this weekend. We had our grandkids hiking the Appalachian Trail, overnight camping. So there's nobody who appreciates the environment more than me and my wife and my family. There are many, many things we can do to improve the environment in Pennsylvania. And the main thing we should do is respect property rights. Again, you have the right to live your life your way, provided you respect the rights and property of others. That's the key right there. Specifically, what I would like to see happen, I would like to treat any environmental situation as a trespass. We all know what trespassing is. You step on somebody's property, sign says no trespassing, you can call in the cops. I would like to see the same thing done with the environment. So if somebody has something blowing onto your property, leaking onto your property, shining onto your property, sounding onto your property, whatever it may be,
Fireworks.
you should have all of the remedies available for trespassing to use against the polluter. That means you can get a court injunction to shut them down, you can make them pay for the cleanup, and to get their mess off of your property. Right now, the government is selling rights to pollute. Do you believe it? Hey, you can pollute, sure. You just got to give me a little bit of your money. And you know where that money goes, don't you? To the government. So that's how I would approach the environment. I would like to see it treated as a trespass. And then, same thing with fracking. I think fracking is a wonderful thing. Big boom for Pennsylvania economically. It's a big boom for America because it helps liberate us from our dependency on foreign oil. But we can't just look at it as a panacea. We can't just say, oh yeah, let the frackers run wild. Of course, you know my specific solution. You want to respect the rights and property of others. So that means I want these frackers to make sure that what they're doing is not going to leak, blow, drift, whatever onto your property. Now fracking happens way deep, way below the water table, mile down, things like that, way down there. So really what we got to watch for is that first sheathing, the first 100, 200, 500 feet under the ground. And that's where we need to pay the most attention to make sure that that's where it doesn't leak. I'm getting into the details of fracking.
Ken, what
now.
about the holding pools, the fracked water?
Same
No.
answer. Same answer. You know, anything that you do creates a bit of a mess. Whether it's building a house, clearing land for a park. The question is, how do we control that mess? Again, if it blows, leaks, or whatever,
You know,
they're now trespassing, and we will
Shouldn't the
take
fracking
measures.
company tell us what chemicals they're using?
No, that depends. Is it on your property?
If it affects, they're getting water
Correct.
out of the creek that I live on. Okay, it's taking water table. You know, someone lives downstream.
Yes.
You know, they're taking that water,
Yes.
and it could affect the watershed that my well's drilled on. Okay, and I drink out of, and my
Correct.
family drinks out
Correct.
of.
But see, again, it goes back to what I said before. You can use the different pieces of trespass, different angles of trespass law
So
to shut them down.
if
And what you're talking about, where they're not saying what the chemicals are, I think that happened a couple of
okay,
years
they
ago.
have holding ponds.
Let me
Okay,
finish.
I'm sorry.
That was a couple of years ago that happened, and they've since released all those chemicals. So, I mean, that's an old ill that has been corrected. When fracking was new, there's no question there were some abuses, but most of those abuses have been addressed. And I know some people who signed away their rights to all their property underneath before realizing what it was when it was all brand new.
Right.
But it's like any new technology. There are always some growing pains.
Oh no,
And I think we've moved pretty much beyond.
you know, don't get me wrong. You know, I lived in Potter County for 8 years. Okay, and
Yeah.
it really is. Potter County, the economy is really booming because of fracking.
Indeed.
Okay, and that's fantastic. We need jobs. Okay, so but Potter County people also, and it's still the #1 industry up there, is logging. If we lose our environment, we lose our jobs.
Amen.
Okay, you know, the people up there, they live off of the land. That is their economy.
I agree. I agree with everything you're saying, Matt.
We were, and I'm sorry, I'm not, just to bring up a point.
You should run for public office. I tell you, because obviously it's close to your heart.
You know, they were traveling when it first began, okay, with the chemicals, the backwater, you know, after they were done fracking, hundreds of miles, because it has to go to a proper wastewater plant.
Correct.
That could take,
Correct.
you know,
And again,
we put the cart before the horse.
Yes, but it comes back to what I was saying before. You want to make sure they're not trespassing.
Right.
And that's it. So if
Right.
they're going to dump the water back into your stream, they have to demonstrate that it's clean.
Right.
We're not going to let them.
Or
put
if, you know, or if
You
it's
know,
gonna.
we're going to go on about this for a while. Let's see. Any other questions on?
Sorry.
Forgive it. Yes.
I have a question about the prisons. First of all, on January 23rd of this year, I went to the Senate Judiciary hearings, They wanted to close a couple of prisons, and they actually had bussed in about 100 prison employees to sit in on the hearings, and then they had a rally in the afternoon. Now, the hearings and the whole issue revolved around jobs. Jobs for the DOC employees. They're making like $55,000 a year, plus pension benefits, etc. And there's a lot of prison abuse going on in there. Really, really bad prison abuse. And now we've just brought in a whole bunch of inmates from Vermont to fill our jails while we're still trying to close prisons.
This sounds terrible. You should run for district justice or something.
I'm thinking about that pretty seriously.
Can I push you to a question?
So anyway,
It's all terrible what I'm hearing.
so what I'm saying is, what can you as a governor do to help decrease the prison population without it ending up being a threat to jobs? I mean, they're sitting there with their signs, save our communities. It was like, save the whales, save our communities, save our jobs. I'm thinking, seriously? You guys are beating up inmates. They have nothing to eat. You know, how about save our inmates?
Yes. But there's a couple answers I could give to that. First one is, simple one, is that as governor, I could shine the blinding white light of publicity on what's going on. And I guarantee you, if I find somebody doing that, I'm going to fire them. I'm going to get them out of there as quickly as I can. But part of the problem is that our prison system is way, way, way too large. And that's another thing that I hear about when I travel the state is crime. Everybody's concerned about crime. There's some interesting statistics, yes, I can talk about statistics about crime. And one of them from the Commonwealth Foundation is that 95% of all crimes are committed by only 5% of the criminals. Now, one thing I can do as governor has the power over the parole board and pardon board through the lieutenant governor. One thing I'm promising, my first day in office, I will pardon every single non-violent drug offender, or anybody who's been convicted of any quote-unquote victimless crime, where nobody was really hurt, where all I did was happen to violate some sentence in some law somewhere, where nobody was hurt, nobody was defrauded, nobody's property was hurt. I promise my first day in office, I will pardon all of them. I will also eliminate parole for violent criminals. Since 5% of the criminals commit 95% of the crimes, we're guaranteed to reduce crime. So we're going to have fewer people in the prisons, we're going to have hardened criminals in there, and there are some cases where people don't belong there, where they were incorrectly convicted or whatever it may be. And then we can rectify those situations on a one-by-one basis with the power of the pardon. But right now, I mean, this drug war, this insane drug war is what's really filling the prisons. Last time I looked, it's about 20% of the people who are in our prisons for drug crimes. Who thinks that a pot smoker belongs in jail? $45,000 a year to pay for it. Keep asking these questions, and nobody says yes. I know I'm on the right track, because I think it's insane. We have so many people in the prisons right now where we've reached the point where prison caps have been instituted, saying you've got to release some of these guys. And we're at the point where we're releasing murderers and rapists from our overcrowded prisons to make room for pot-smoking Grateful Dead fans. That's insane! Well, when I'm governor, that's something else that will end. I'm going to pardon anybody that doesn't belong in prison. There has to be a real conviction with a real judge for a real crime. Otherwise, they've got to get out of jail free card. Did I answer your question?
All right.
Yes, I
Thank
have
you.
another one.
Well, how about somebody else? Let's take turns.
I got one that's kind of a hot topic.
Okay.
The opioid crisis.
Is there a crisis?
That, supposedly.
Do you know, my first reaction when I heard that, it's like, there's an opioid crisis? What is an opioid crisis?
Well, people dying mostly from overdoses.
I went online to find out what it is. What they did is they took several things that existed before, and now they've lumped it together to form a new crisis. So it's a marketing campaign to get them to do things. One thing they're trying to do is tighten these insane drug laws. Haven't they learned? I mean, the birth of organized crime came from Prohibition. They gave birth to Al Capone and the gangs. And now their drug prohibition gave birth to Escobar and the cartels. and all these other guys. And now they're starting to say, oh, we got to tighten more, the opioid crisis, this new crisis we've just manufactured. Now, I'm not trying to trivialize that, because there are people dying from it. One of the main reasons people are dying from it is because we've taken a social problem and we've made it a criminal problem.
Amen.
Can you imagine walking into the police station saying, excuse me, sir, could you help me? I'm a heroin addict. Yeah, we'll help you get in the cell. We've got to eliminate, end this insane war on drugs.
Right.
Even to the point where the prescription laws are way over the top, saying people can only do certain things. I would point to some place like Portugal. Portugal eliminated all of their drug laws, even for the opioids. Do you know what happened to their drug use statistics? They plummeted. Hospital admissions dropped. People were safer, people were happier, fewer addicts, fewer people using drugs. And look at it from the other point of view. Where are you going to get the drugs? You got to go out in the street. What are you doing? You're supporting organized crime. There are terrorists who are bringing drugs into the country, smuggling drugs in. You're funding terrorists every time you make another drug illegal. The solution to the opioid crisis is to end this insane war on drugs, to take what they've made a criminal problem and treat it now as a social problem that it has always been. Right now it's glamorous to be a drug dealer. You get the gold chain around your neck, you get the fancy car. Once we end this war on drugs, it won't be glamorous anymore to do drugs. It'll just be stupid. Look at tobacco. Tobacco is on the way down. Everybody knows it hurts you. It's going to be gone soon enough. It's going to be the same thing with all these other things. Are you going to get rid of 100%? No. No, you'll never be able to get rid of 100%. You're not going to be able to save every sparrow. Can't be done. But we can save a lot more sparrows than what we're doing today by ending this insane war on drugs.
All right.
Amen.
You're here.
Amen. Yeah.
Good question. Any other questions? I'll come back. All right, Debbie, go for number 2.
Political corruption, cop corruption, district attorney corruption, court corruption. How can we combat
Most
this?
honest people around,
The
right?
statistics are that 95% of the people in prison in the United States never had a trial. And I, as a court watcher, realize and have observed that all of the counties that I have been in watching the courtrooms are operating in violation of federal RICO statutes.
Well, first of all, let me say that 95% of the people in jail without a trial,
Yes, that's what the statistics are.
I find that difficult to understand. Do me a
Because
favor,
they took
after
plea agreements. They took plea agreements because they were told,
I see.
either you agree to these terms or you're going to go away forever. And they're like, but I'm innocent. Yeah, well, so-and-so said something against, they lied to all the different, suspects and said, well, that kid over there said blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I never did that. Yeah, well,
I see.
and they lie all the time.
I
to
see. No,
defendants.
you're right. And I've seen that personally. There was one where we had a demonstration in Allentown in front of the courthouse, federal courthouse. And one guy, George Donnelly, I'm not ashamed to say it, I'm sure George would want his name out there. George is standing there taking pictures. He was attacked by the federal marshals. They reached out, grabbed his camera, pulled it out of his hand, and they accused him of attacking them. And it's all on film. What they did is they had his camera, they erased the video, and they told him that he got his camera back eventually, and through the magic of technology, we undeleted the files. And there it is, showing them attacking him and everything like that. He did a plea bargain. They said, we're going to go to trial. If we go to trial, you know what's going to happen, this, that, and the other thing. He agreed to, quote unquote, a modification of the facts. Do you believe that? Modification of the facts. Where he said, yes, I did attack them, but it wasn't really malicious or anything like that. And he got off with a $500 fine. Happens all the time.
He was lucky.
Yeah.
Now, I'll go back. Yeah, he was very lucky. $500, I don't know how lucky you call that.
It wasn't jail.
As
My
these,
fines are $2,000.
as these things come to light, again, as governor, I can shine the blinding white light of publicity on this and say, look what they did. Look what they did to George. Look what they did to these people. I like that, the way you put that statistic. 95% of the people are in jail without a trial. I'm going to look into that, because that's true. And Daniel, that goes back to what you and I were talking about beforehand, about how you have to question what the basic facts are. Because they said that traffic accidents in Colorado went up 3% after drugs were decriminalized there, after marijuana was decriminalized. Well, I went back and I read the original study. 3% compared to what? They compared it to Idaho, to Montana. Now, how does that, these rural states, compare to this nice Rocky Mountain High yuppie state? It doesn't. And they only found a 3% difference. Anyway, got to go back to the beginning. That's good stuff. Thank you. I learned something. It's worth the ride up here today just to hear that. Anybody else? No? Okay, you know, let me wrap up with just one statement. Again, vote for me, Ken Krawchuk, Libertarian for governor. You notice I'm not dressed up today. I did that for 2 reasons. First of all, we're going to be out in the park. It's a beautiful day. But the second reason is I wanted to wear my SpaceX shirt. SpaceX is important. You familiar with SpaceX? They're resupplying the International Space Station. They're a private company. One man, Elon Musk, put this company together.
Oh, Elon!
His goal is to make humans a multiplanetary species. He didn't take government handouts. Yes, he sells services to the government. That's okay. But in the beginning, he says, I'm going to make space flight cheap. They laughed. And he says, I'm going to cut the price by half, 3/4. They laughed. They ridiculed him. But his spaceships that are now going to orbit, resupplying the International Space Station, if I wanted to launch one, he would charge me $62 million. If I went to one of the government contractors, Boeing or Lockheed or ULA or any of those, for the same flight, they would charge me $250 million. 4 times as much. I'm wearing my SpaceX shirt because we libertarians have something in common with Elon Musk and SpaceX. They used to make fun of us. They're not making as much fun of us anymore. Not since Ron Paul, Rand Paul, and other people like that. Now they're trying to fight us. But they're starting to adopt our ideas. When I ran for governor back in 2002, I was talking about decriminalization of marijuana. People say, Ken, you're crazy. It'll never happen. Half the states now have medical marijuana. What is it, 7, 8, 9? I lose track. There's new states every day. Recreational marijuana. Because people are finding out that this insane war on drugs is crazy. Like SpaceX, we are challenging the status quo. And like SpaceX, we will beat them. But in order to do that, please vote for me, Ken Krawchuk, Libertarian for governor. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Governor,
Thank you.
wouldn't it be nice if he's our next governor of Pennsylvania?
Indeed.
Now let me introduce you to the Pennsylvania Libertarian Party chairman, the big man himself, Drew Bingaman.
Thanks, Matt. Hey, when Matt called me and told me that he was putting this together, he asked me to speak, and he said that Debbie was going to be reading the Declaration of Independence, and Ken was going to be giving one of his speeches for his campaign. And I said, hey, is anybody going to be reading the Statement of Principles? He says, no, nobody's going to be doing that. And I said, well,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think anybody in the party, we don't publicize these enough, and I don't think we read them enough, and I don't think we share them enough. The Libertarian Party Statement of Principles was ratified shortly after the party was formed in the early 70s. I don't have the exact date here on the sheet, but
December 17th, 1971.
there you go. And it's written in our Constitution that it's very nearly impossible to change them. I think it takes, what, 7/8 of a convention to change them?
Thank you, D. Frank Robinson.
So, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the Libertarian Party Statement of Principles. We, the members of the Libertarian Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend the rights of the individual. We hold that all individuals have the right to exercise sole dominion over their own lives and have the right to live in whatever manner they choose, so long as they do not forcibly interfere with the equal rights of others to live in whatever manner that they choose. Governments throughout history have regularly operated on the opposite principle, that the state has the right to dispose of the lives of individuals and the fruits of their labor. Even within the United States, all political parties other than our own grant the government the right to regulate the lives of individuals and seize the fruits of their labor without their consent. We, on the contrary, deny the rights of any government to do these things, and hold where governments exist, they must not violate the rights of any individual, namely, 1, the right to life. Accordingly, we support the prohibition of the initiation of physical force against others. 2, the right to liberty of speech and action. Accordingly, we oppose all attempts by government to abridge the freedom of speech and press, as well as government censorship in any form. And 3, the right to property. Accordingly, we oppose all government interference with private property such as confiscation, nationalization, and eminent domain, and support the prohibition of robbery, trespass, fraud, and misrepresentation. Since governments, when instituted, must not violate individual rights, we oppose all interference by government in the areas of voluntary and contractual relations among individuals. People should not be forced to sacrifice their lives and property for the benefit of others. They should be left free by government to deal with one another as free traders, and the resultant economic system, the only one compatible with the protection of individual rights, is the free market.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Where do I sign up?
Thank you, Matt.